So I'm Jane Hill. I'm in the Department of Biology. I'm an ecologist. So my research has been focused around how biodiversity is responding to climate change. And I've also got interests in the tropics around tropical forest deforestation and sustainable production of food and tropical commodities. So that's the sort of approach that I've been bringing to this research theme, and it's been fantastic to take over from Johan Fazy, and then before that from Sue Hartley. And for those of you who don't know me, I've also been involved with ES&R for 10 years. So I've been doing quite a lot in the sort of sustainability space, environmental sustainability space from an interdisciplinary perspective. So it's been a fantastic to be able to sort of move on to be the champion in this area. And the first challenge, I guess, is that there is so much going on in this space that one of the things that I'm really keen to do is to make sure that I facilitate more great research, knowing that there's already a fantastic amount going on, and to help facilitate that where I can, rather than sort of duplicating any efforts. And before I go on, just to talk about what I've been doing, I'd just like to say thanks to everyone who I've been talking to in the conversations that I've been having. And if anyone is on this call who would like to talk to me, please just do. It's great to hear from you, and also great to hear how I can help in this space, because I know there's a huge groundswell of support and recognition of the great things that the university is doing in this space, and also a desire to do more. So it's about thinking about how I could facilitate that and help bring people together and talk to people who are wanting to do more in the environmental sustainability and resilience space. So that's me. So what I'm going to do without further ado is just talk a little bit about what my priorities are and where they come from, and then as Rachel's just done, talk a little bit about the progress that I've been making so far. So these are my priorities, and again there's a tendency for them to sort of blur into each other because there is such a lot going on in this environment space. But actually I find it quite useful to have identified these priorities as distinctive but nonetheless overlapping. So the first one is around sustainable landscapes, and I guess, you know, we talk a lot about COVID and about building back greener and about all of the issues that have come about as a consequence of Brexit and this sort of perfect storm of changes to the landscape around us, but also opportunities for exciting new research that feeds into policy and solutions. So the first one around sustainable landscapes is recognising that landscapes have multiple functions: delivering food, protecting biodiversity, providing green spaces for us, and boosting our physical and mental health. And within this is also the pledge by the government for protecting 30% of the landscapes, the 30 by 30 pledge. And of course, there's a lot of commitments to plant trees as nature-based solutions. And then in that mix is also post-Brexit landscapes and the ways that farmers may be responding to that and doing different things to the landscape. So there's lots of exciting research to be done there, bringing together research at York and also moving it forward in an interdisciplinary space, trying to address the complexity of that decision-making process and understanding what new research is needed in order to ensure success in the future. It's a very complex question, but one that I think York research can really address. So then thinking about restoring resilient habitats. So there's a lot going on at the moment around habitat restoration, and I guess this is linked to our concern about biodiversity losses, recognised during our sort of lockdown and post-COVID, and thinking about where some of the pandemic has arisen from, and the interactions of people with the environment, and that people are part of the environment and part of biodiversity. So I'm interested in fundamental questions about what people actually think restoration is. What do we mean about it? There's a lot of confusion in that terminology, and lots of people thinking they're talking the same thing, but perhaps they're not. And also thinking about who decides what to restore and restore back to what. and what are the benefits and potential disbenefits for local communities. And so there's a lot of equity and justice issues around that, as well as fundamental ecological questions about how do we restore and how do we know if we've been successful or not. And then, of course, we all know about COP26 and the upcoming meeting in Glasgow. So there's a huge push for industry and governments to reach their net zero goals. So within this space, thinking very much linking to what's going on in Glasgow in November, and thinking about how we're going to reach this net zero commitment. So from my perspective in environmental sustainability, I guess I'm thinking a lot more about nature-based solutions, but clearly we can't just plant trees. There's a lot more other fundamental things we need to do, and interacting with the other champions to think about a suite of things that we have to do in order to meet those pledges. So I'm quite interested in the success of, or not, of nature-based solutions and the way in which York research can contribute to those policy decisions. And as you can see there, finally, there's also interdisciplinarity. I do a lot of interdisciplinary research, but I struggle a bit to know how to make sure that that's successful, and I'm aware of a lot of the challenges of that, and I'm sure I'm not the only one, and I'm quite interested in how we can help to support interdisciplinary research, given that we know how important that is. So I'll just go through a few things about what the discussions have been about, and the ways in which you might be interested in contributing to these, and the ways in which we're going to be organising workshops and discussions and other fora to have those conversations. So a lot of this is thinking about what do we do with our landscapes, how do we decide, who decides, and what are the consequences in terms of justice and equity, as well as the success for environment and the biodiversity. So a huge complexity of decision making there, but also exciting challenges and ways forward in which we can contribute. I've been working with industry around helping them work out what they need to know in order to meet their ambitious nature and climate commitments. Most of you will know, if you look on any corporate webpage, that they have great commitments to nature and climate, and they've made those commitments, and now they're coming to talk to researchers about how they're actually going to achieve those. And that's been a really interesting discussion, and I think at York we can do a lot more to help. And it's also thrown up some really interesting issues, particularly around restoration for what, and can we have multiple outcomes from restoration, so sort of win-wins where you can both restore for livelihoods and for nature and for carbon capture. And those are challenges. Wouldn't it be nice if it was easy? I'm sure it won't be, and there'll be challenges there, but that's one of the things that I've been doing. There's been, some of you may have attended the conference last month for the Universities Network for COP26, run out of the University of Glasgow. Don't forget, of course, that although we're all focused on COP26 because it's being held in Glasgow, there's also a COP15 around the Convention on Biological Diversity that's going to be held in Kunming in October. So there's lots happening around that space, and lots of ways in which, as a champion, I can explain to staff who are interested and researchers who are interested about what's happening as well. What's the problem? Sorry, I think somebody's got unmuted themselves. Anyway, so there's lots that we can do about providing information about what's going on, and as well as feeding into those discussions, and lots of discussions around interdisciplinary research. So what's next? So I just thought I'd that I've been talking about most recently. So one of the things across several of the champions that we've been talking about is we've been focusing our discussion around the question about what makes a city worth living in, and thinking about life in York sort of post-COVID, post-Brexit, and so on. And what we found, well, certainly what I found, is that it's provided a really good focus to bring together a lot of the issues that we're all interested in around the topic, say, of the city of York, and thinking about how can we make York a better place to live in, from my perspective, from boosting biodiversity and green spaces, but also recognising all of those other trade-offs and challenges about what living in a city brings. I'll be wanting to build, in a year's time, I'll be hoping that we'll have built on any of the outputs from COP26 and COP15, and where new research needs have been identified and so on. And we're also planning within York, before COP26, to hold some sort of radical COP, or some sort of way in which we can hold discussions and workshops prior to the Glasgow meeting, to talk around the various themes that are going to be discussed at COP, opportunity for people to find out a little bit more, and also perhaps ways in which, if we had had our any input, we would have perhaps run it a little bit differently. I've been involved in decolonising and the discussions around that, so it'd be great to do more in that space. And one of the things I've become very sensitive to is around a lot of these tree planting initiatives that are taking place in the tropics, that are being led out of the global north. It's a very interesting place in terms of recognising some of the colonisation almost happening all over again, in terms of the global north buying up opportunities, carbon financing opportunities, to offset their carbon in the global south. So there's some interesting issues there. And I'd be interested to feedback about what sort of interdisciplinarity support we could provide for staff, for researchers, and also for students, about how we can support that. As I say, I know a lot of people are really signed up to it, but I'm not sure, I certainly don't feel as though I was particularly trained to do that. It's just sort of thing that I've sort of worked out as I've gone along, and I'm sure there must be better ways of doing that. And then, of course, we're thinking very much about environmental sustainability at York, for teaching, for research staff and students. What more can we do very practically there to ensure that everything we do at the university is sustainable? So I think, yeah, that's me.